Hi, I'm Rachel. I thought being the dependable sister meant unconditional love and respect. Instead, at our family reunion in Maplewood Gardens, my niece looked me straight in the eye and said, "Mom says you never give back to the family." 10 years of silent generosity, erased in one sentence. But what my sister Vanessa didn't know was that I'd kept every receipt, every bank statement, every shred of proof. And when the truth finally came out, it didn't just shock the family, it shattered the perfect image she'd spent years building. Before we continue, shout out your location in the comments. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. Our community is growing, and tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. The late August sun beat down on Maplewood Gardens, turning the pavilion into a humid maze of checkered tablecloths and folding chairs. Our family reunion, an annual tradition that felt more like an obligation than a celebration. I pulled into the gravel parking lot, the dust kicking up around my tires as classic rock drifted from someone's portable speaker near the picnic tables. I grabbed the bakery boxes from my passenger seat, 3 dozen cupcakes from that expensive place downtown, the one with the salted caramel frosting everyone raved about last year. $65. I didn't particularly have to spare, but that's what you did for family, right? You showed up. You contributed. You smiled through the small talk and pretended the past didn't leave scars. Vanessa's silver SUV was already parked in the shade, gleaming like always. My older sister had a talent for making everything look effortless. The perfect hair, the designer sunglasses, the kids who never seemed to have juice stains on their shirts. I loved her, I really did. But somewhere along the way, love had gotten complicated, tangled up with resentment and unspoken debts. I made my way toward the pavilion, the boxes balanced carefully in my arms. Aunts and uncles waved from their scattered positions around the park. My cousin Jared manned the grill, smoke billowing up in thick clouds. Children shrieked near the playground, their laughter cutting through the heavy air. Then I saw her. Vanessa stood near the dessert table, holding court with our Aunt Linda and Uncle Greg, her smile wide and practiced. Her daughter, 10-year-old Fiona, sat cross-legged on the grass, braiding dandelions with intense focus. I approached with what I hoped was a casual smile, setting the cupcakes down on the dessert table next to someone's lopsided sheet cake and a bowl of fruit salad already browning at the edges. "Rachel!" Vanessa's voice rang out, bright and performative. "You made it! And you brought cupcakes? How sweet!" There was something in her tone, an edge I couldn't quite name. Aunt Linda smiled politely, but Uncle Greg had already turned his attention back to his phone. "They're from Sullivan's Bakery," I said, brushing crumbs from my hands. "The place you liked last time." "Oh, I remember," Vanessa said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Must be nice to splurge like that." The comment landed like a small stone dropped into still water. I forced a laugh, ignoring the ripple. Fiona looked up from her dandelions, her wide brown eyes settling on me with an unsettling intensity. "Aunt Rachel, can I ask you something?" "Sure, sweetie," I said, crouching down to her level. She hesitated, glancing briefly at her mother before speaking. "Mom says you never give back to the family. Is that true?" The world tilted. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words hung in the air between us, innocent and devastating all at once. Around us, conversations continued. Someone laughed, the grill hissed in the distance, but all I could hear was the echo of that single sentence. "Mom says you never give back to the family." I looked up at Vanessa. Her face had gone carefully blank, a mask of false surprise. "Fiona, honey, that's not—" she started, but her voice lacked conviction. "What?" I stood slowly, my legs feeling unsteady beneath me. "What did you tell her?" "Vanessa," she laughed sharp and brittle. "Rachel, don't be dramatic. She's a kid. She misunderstood." But Fiona shook her head, her small face earnest. "No, Mom, you said it last week when Grandma called. You said Aunt Rachel never helps with anything and always makes excuses." The air felt thick, suffocating. Aunt Linda shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in her potato salad. Uncle Greg cleared his throat and mumbled something about checking on the drinks. "That's not true," I said quietly, my voice trembling despite my effort to keep it steady. "Vanessa, you know that's not true." She waved a hand dismissively, her charm slipping back into place like armor. "Oh, come on, don't make this into a thing. You're so sensitive." I turned and walked toward the edge of the park, past the playground, past the soccer field, until I reached the line of oak trees at the perimeter. My chest felt tight, my eyes burning with tears I refused to shed in front of them. Behind me, the reunion continued. Music played, people ate. Life went on as if my entire reality hadn't just cracked open. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking slightly as I opened my banking app. 10 years of transactions. 10 years of proof. Venmo payments to Vanessa. Zelle transfers. Bank statements showing withdrawals with notes like V's car and F's birthday present and emergency loan. I had kept everything. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I was meticulous by nature. Someone who color-coded spreadsheets and filed receipts in labeled folders. Now, staring at the evidence of my own generosity reflected back at me in cold digital numbers, I realized something that should have been obvious all along. Vanessa hadn't forgotten what I'd done for her. She'd rewritten the story to make herself the hero and me the selfish one. And she'd been telling that story to everyone who would listen. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface for years suddenly crystallized into something sharp and clear. I wasn't going to let this stand. Not anymore. I took a deep breath, the humid air filling my lungs as I stared at my phone screen. Around me, the oak trees rustled gently, indifferent to the war beginning to wage inside me. The reunion sounds faded into background noise. Distant laughter, the clatter of paper plates, children's voices rising and falling like waves. But all I could hear was Fiona's innocent question echoing in my mind. Mom says you never give back to the family. 10 years. 10 years of showing up, of saying yes when I should have said no, of believing that blood meant loyalty. And this was my reward? I scrolled through my phone, past years of documented kindness that had been erased from the family narrative. My finger hovered over the folder labeled Family Expenses. Inside were screenshots, PDFs, scanned receipts, an archive of invisible labor. I wasn't the villain in this story. But I was done being the silent martyr. This story took hours to research and craft, so if you're enjoying it, a quick subscribe would truly make our day. Now let's get back to it. I didn't return to the pavilion right away. Instead, I sat in my car, windows down, watching the reunion unfold from a distance. The cupcakes I had brought were probably being devoured by now, my contribution absorbed into the collective feast without acknowledgement, just like everything else. My phone felt heavy in my hands as I opened my email and started a new draft. No recipient yet, no subject line, just a blank page waiting to be filled with 10 years of truth. But I wasn't ready to send anything, not yet. First, I needed to understand the full scope of what Vanessa had been saying. Who else believed her version of events? How deep did this narrative run? I stepped out of the car and walked back toward the reunion, this time with different eyes. Observational. Clinical. I wasn't here to enjoy myself anymore. I was here to gather information. Near the drink cooler, my cousin Jared was talking to Uncle Greg. I approached casually, grabbing a soda from the melting ice. "Hey, Rachel," Jared said, his smile genuine. "Good to see you. Been a while." "Yeah, work's been crazy," I said, popping open the can. "How's the contracting business?" "Busy season. Actually, Vanessa mentioned you might be looking for some renovation work done. Said you finally bought a place?" I froze mid-sip. "What?" "Yeah, she said you got a condo downtown. Said you've been so focused on your own life lately that—" She stopped, reading my expression. Did I get that wrong? I forced a smile that felt like broken glass. I'm still renting the same apartment I've had for 5 years. Jared's face shifted, confusion flickering across his features. Uncle Greg suddenly looked very interested in his burger. "Huh," Jared said slowly. "That's weird. She seemed pretty sure." I excused myself before my composure cracked completely. A condo downtown, focused on my own life. Vanessa wasn't just telling people I didn't give back, she was inventing an entire alternate reality where I was thriving selfishly while the family struggled. A reality where my absence of help was a deliberate choice born from success and self-absorption, not because I'd already given everything I had. I found a quiet spot near the far picnic table and pulled out my phone again. This time, I opened my photo gallery and started scrolling. Birthday parties I'd thrown for Fiona and her brother Jasper. Christmas gifts I'd carefully wrapped. Screenshots of text conversations where Vanessa asked for just one more favor. Then I opened my banking app and started creating a document. A spreadsheet. Cold, factual, undeniable. Date. Amount. Purpose. Repaid? June 2015. $3,000. Emergency loan. Rent. No. December 2015. $450. Birthday party expenses. No. March 2016. $800. Car repair. No. August 2016. $200. School supplies and clothes. No. The list went on and on and on. Free babysitting hours, approximately $600 over 3 years. Market rate, at $15 an hour, $9,000. Furniture I'd helped move, assemble, or purchase, conservatively $2,500. Emergency pickups from school when Vanessa was stuck in meetings, countless. By the time I finished the initial tally, my hands were trembling. Not from sadness anymore, from rage. $18,000? $18,000 in countless hours of my life, given freely, without expectation of repayment, because that's what family did. That's what I did. And somehow I was the one who never gave back. I saved the document to my cloud storage, then created a second file, this one for photos. Every birthday card I'd given, every thoughtful gift, every time I'd shown up when Vanessa needed me. I was building a case, brick by brick, receipt by receipt. Not for a court of law, but for the court of public opinion that had already convicted me without trial. Rachel? I looked up to find my Aunt Linda approaching, her expression careful and concerned. Sweetheart, are you all right? You've been over here alone for a while. I considered lying. Considered saying I was fine, just tired, just needed some quiet. Instead, I said, Aunt Linda, can I ask you something? She sat down across from me, her floral blouse bright against the weathered picnic table. Of course. What has Vanessa told you about me? Linda's face did something complicated. A flash of discomfort quickly smoothed over. I don't understand what you mean. Please, I said quietly. Just tell me the truth. She sighed, looking out toward the playground where Fiona was now swinging, her braided dandelions forgotten in the grass. She's mentioned that you've become distant, that you're focused on your career, that it's been hard for her, raising 2 kids mostly on her own while you're off living your best life. Living my best life? I almost laughed. My best life was a 1-bedroom apartment with a leaky faucet I couldn't afford to fix. It was grocery shopping at discount stores and skipping brunches with friends because I'd spent my extra money on Fiona's soccer cleats. Did you tell her about the money I lent her? I asked. Linda shifted uncomfortably. She said you helped out a few times, yes. She's grateful for that, but $3,000 for rent, $800 for her car, hundreds more for the kids. Did she mention that none of it was ever paid back? Rachel, family doesn't keep score. I'm not keeping score. I interrupted, my voice sharper than intended. I'm keeping records. There's a difference. And those records show that I've spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours helping Vanessa while she's been telling everyone I'm selfish. Linda's mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, she looked genuinely troubled. I'm sure there's been some miscommunication. Fiona just asked me if it's true that I never give back to the family. A 10-year-old child repeating her mother's lies. That's not miscommunication, Aunt Linda. That's calculated. I stood up, my phone clutched tight in my hand. I'm going home. Thank you for being honest with me. As I walked away, I heard Linda call after me, but I didn't turn around. I'd spent too many years turning around, going back, trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix. The drive home was a blur of stop signs and traffic lights, my mind replaying the conversation, the spreadsheet, Fiona's innocent question. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex parking lot, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that felt almost mocking in their beauty. Inside my apartment, I stood in the middle of my small living room and let the silence wash over me. No kids asking for snacks, no sister calling with another emergency, just quiet. I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd started at the park, then began adding to it. Every babysitting session I could remember, every gift, every favor, every time I'd rearranged my life to accommodate hers. The document grew from 1 page to 3. 3 pages of documented generosity that had been rewritten as abandonment. Around midnight, I created a new folder on my desktop, labeled it The Truth. Started organizing everything by category: financial support, childcare, gifts, emergency assistance, general favors. I wasn't sure yet what I would do with all this evidence, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was done being the villain in someone else's fiction. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. "You left without saying goodbye. Everything okay?" I stared at the message for a long moment. There was a time when I would have apologized, explained, smoothed things over. That version of Rachel was gone. Instead, I typed, "We need to talk, soon." Her response came quickly. "Is this about what Fiona said? She's a kid, Ratch. Don't blow it out of proportion." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed, "This is about 10 years of being erased from the family story. We'll talk Monday." I didn't wait for her response. I silenced my phone and returned to my laptop, where the evidence of my invisible labor glowed back at me from the screen. This time, I wasn't going to let my story be rewritten. This time, I had receipts. Monday came faster than I expected. I'd spent the entire weekend in my apartment organizing evidence and rehearsing conversations in my head that never quite sounded right. The folder on my desktop had grown to include scanned receipts, email threads, text message screenshots, and a meticulously detailed timeline spanning a decade. Sunday night, Vanessa had texted asking where I wanted to meet. I suggested a coffee shop in downtown Riverbank, neutral territory, public enough to keep things civil, but quiet enough to have a real conversation. I arrived 15 minutes early, ordering a black coffee I didn't particularly want and claiming a corner table near the window. The late morning sun streamed through the glass, illuminating dust particles that drifted lazily through the air. Outside, people walked past with shopping bags and strollers, living lives blissfully uncomplicated by family betrayal. Vanessa walked in exactly on time, wearing yoga pants and an expensive-looking jacket, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She spotted me immediately and waved, that practice smile already in place as she ordered some elaborate latte before making her way over. "Hey," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "You look tired. Everything okay?" The casual concern felt like sandpaper against my nerves. "We need to talk about what Fiona said at the reunion." Vanessa sighed, stirring her latte with deliberate slowness. "Rachel, I already told you, she's 10. Kids mix things up. You're making a mountain out of nothing." "She didn't mix anything up," I said quietly. "She repeated exactly what you told her, that I never give back to the family." "I never said that." "Yes, you did. She heard you on the phone with Mom. She was very specific about the details." Vanessa's expression flickered, just for a second before settling back into practiced innocence. "Look, maybe I was venting. Maybe I said something in frustration. Sisters complain about each other sometimes. It doesn't mean anything." "What were you frustrated about?" I leaned forward, keeping my voice level. "What exactly have I done or not done that made you tell our mother, and apparently everyone else, that I don't contribute to this family?" She shifted in her seat, her fingers drumming against her cup. You're not around much anymore. You're always busy with work, and when there are family things, you show up late or leave early or... I was at the reunion for 2 hours before Fiona said that. I brought $65 worth of cupcakes from the bakery you specifically requested last year. What part of that is not contributing? "It's not just about showing up with dessert, Rachel." Her voice was rising slightly, drawing a glance from the barista behind the counter. "It's about being present, being involved, being there when people need you." The absurdity of it hit me like a physical blow.
When have I not been there? Plenty of times. When I needed help with the kids. I watched Fiona and Jasper 3 days a week for nearly 3 years. Free childcare that would have cost you over $9,000 at market rate. Vanessa blinked. I never asked you to keep track of that. I didn't keep track for you. I kept track for me, because apparently I needed proof that I actually exist in this family. I pulled out my phone, opening the spreadsheet. $3,000 in 2015 for rent when Derek lost his job. $800 for your car in 2016. $200 for school supplies. $450 for Fiona's birthday party. Do you want me to keep going? Her face had gone pale, a flush creeping up her neck. You made a spreadsheet? Yes, because you've been telling people I'm selfish, that I never help, that I'm too focused on my own life to care about family. And I needed to know if I was crazy or if you were lying. This is insane, Vanessa said, her voice dropping to an angry whisper. What kind of person tracks every little thing they do for family like it's some kind of transaction? The kind who gets accused of never giving back. I set my phone down on the table between us. You told Aunt Linda I bought a condo downtown, and that's why I've been distant. I'm still in the same one-bedroom apartment I've rented for 5 years. You told Jared I'm too busy with my career to help out. I'm a mid-level coordinator making $42,000 a year. What exactly about my life looks like I'm thriving while abandoning everyone? Vanessa's jaw tightened. So what? You want an apology? You want me to stand up at the next reunion and announce that you're actually a saint? Is that what this is about? I want you to stop lying about me. I'm not lying. You are. My voice was steady now, cold. You've created an entire narrative where I'm the selfish sister who escaped to her fabulous life while you struggle alone. And it's working. People believe you. Our own family believe I don't care about them because you spent years planting that story. She looked away, staring out the window at the passing traffic. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost bitter. You don't understand what it's like. What's like? Being the one who stayed, the one who got married young, had kids, gave up everything for this family while you got to just live your life. Do you know how many times Mom compares us? How many times people ask me why I'm not more like you? The accusation hung in the air between us, and for the first time, I saw something real beneath Vanessa's practiced exterior. Not justification, but pain. Old, festering resentment that had nothing to do with money or favors and everything to do with choices neither of us could undo. So you made me the villain to make your choices feel better? That's not... She stopped, closing her eyes. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. But it did. And now Fiona thinks I don't care about her. Now our entire family think I'm selfish. And I have to live with that because you needed someone to blame for your own regrets. Vanessa's hands were trembling slightly around her cup. What do you want from me, Rachel?
I want the truth. I want you to tell Mom, tell Aunt Linda, tell everyone who's heard your version what really happened. I want you to stop using me as your excuse. And if I don't, I picked up my phone, meeting her eyes directly. Then I'll do it myself. I have 10 years of proof. Every loan, every favor, every hour of free babysitting, every lie you told about my fictional condo and my selfish career. I'll share all of it. Her face hardened. You wouldn't. Try me. We sat in silence for a long moment, the coffee shop sounds filling the space between us, the hiss of the espresso machine, quiet conversations from other tables, the clink of ceramic against wood. Finally, Vanessa stood up, grabbing her purse. You're really going to destroy our relationship over this? You already did that, I said. I'm just refusing to be destroyed along with it. She left without another word, the door chiming softly as she pushed through it. I watched her cross the parking lot to her pristine SUV, her shoulders rigid with anger or shame, or both. My coffee had gone cold. I left it on the table and walked out into the bright afternoon, feeling lighter and heavier all at once. That evening, my phone started buzzing. First, a text from my mother. "Vanessa says you two had a fight. What's going on?" Then, Aunt Linda. "Honey, I heard there was some tension. Do you want to talk?" Then, surprisingly, Jared. "V called me upset. Said you accused her of lying about you. That true?" I stared at the messages, watching them multiply. Vanessa was already controlling the narrative again, already spinning this into another story where I was the aggressor, the unreasonable one, the sister who ruined everything. I took a deep breath and opened a new group message. Added my mother, Aunt Linda, Uncle Greg, Jared, and a handful of other family members who'd been at the reunion. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was the point of no return. Once I sent this, there would be no taking it back, no more pretending everything was fine, no more silent suffering for the sake of family peace. I started typing. "Hi, everyone. I need to address something that came up at the reunion. For the past several years, I've been painted as someone who doesn't contribute to this family. I want to share some facts." I attached the spreadsheet, the receipts, the screenshots, 10 years of evidence laid bare for everyone to see. Then I added one final line. "I'm not sharing this to embarrass anyone or to keep score. I'm sharing it because I refuse to be erased from my own story. If we are going to be a family, it has to be built on truth, not convenient lies." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The responses started immediately. Shock, confusion, some defensive messages from people who'd believed Vanessa's version, but also, slowly, validation. Jared. "Holy hell, Rachel. I had no idea." Aunt Linda. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. We should have asked more questions." Even my mother, after a long silence. "We need to talk. All three of us. This has gone too far." I set my phone down and walked to my window, looking out at the city lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settled over Riverbank. Somewhere across town, Vanessa was probably reading those same messages, watching her carefully constructed narrative crumble. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. But for the first time in years, I also felt seen. The truth was out now. Whatever came next, at least it would be built on something real. The fallout was immediate and overwhelming. By the next morning, my phone had exploded with messages. Some supportive, others accusatory, many just confused. The family group chat that usually shared recipes and baby photos had turned into a war zone of fragmented conversations and deleted messages. My mother called at 7 in the morning. I almost didn't answer, but I knew avoiding her would only make things worse. "Rachel, what on earth were you thinking?" Her voice was tight, strained in a way I rarely heard. "Airing family business like that, in front of everyone?" I sat up in bed, rubbing sleep from my eyes. "I was thinking that I'm tired of being lied about." "You humiliated your sister. She humiliated herself. I just provided context." There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing, could almost picture her standing in her kitchen with one hand pressed to her forehead, the way she did when life got too complicated. "We're having a family meeting this Saturday. You and Vanessa both need to be there. This ends now." "Mom, I mean it, Rachel. No more messages, no more spreadsheets, no more public accusations. We handle this face to face, like adults." She hung up before I could respond. I lay back against my pillows, staring at the ceiling where a water stain from last winter's leak still marked the plaster. A family meeting. The diplomatic solution my parents always reached for when things got messy, as if sitting around their dining room table could magically erase years of resentment. But I started this. I had to see it through. The rest of the week crawled by in a haze of anxiety and second-guessing. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction of spreadsheets and project timelines that made sense, unlike my family dynamics. My coworker Bryn noticed I was off, bringing me coffee and asking gentle questions I deflected with practiced ease.
By Friday evening, I'd received texts from nearly everyone who'd be at the meeting. Aunt Linda sent a long message about how families fight but love conquers all, which felt both sincere and painfully naive. Uncle Greg wrote simply, "Truth hurts, but it's still truth. Proud of you, kid." Jared sent a meme of a dumpster fire with the caption, "Saturday's vibe," followed by, "But seriously, I got your back." Vanessa sent nothing. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that matched my mood perfectly. I drove to my parents' house in Cedarville, the familiar route triggering a complicated mix of nostalgia and dread. The two-story colonial where I'd grown up looked smaller than I remembered, the blue paint fading, the garden my mother once meticulously maintained, now overgrown with weeds. Vanessa's SUV was already in the driveway. I sat in my car for a full minute, gathering courage, before finally walking up the cracked pathway to the front door. My mother answered before I could knock, her face carefully neutral. "Everyone's in the dining room," she said, stepping aside to let me in. The house smelled like coffee and something baking. My mother's stress response was always to feed people, as if carbs could solve family dysfunction. I followed her through the hallway lined with family photos, my younger face smiling out from various stages of childhood, always standing slightly apart from Vanessa, even then. The dining room felt too small for the tension it held. My father sat at the head of the table, his reading glasses perched on his nose, looking older than I remembered. Vanessa sat across from an empty chair, clearly mine, her arms crossed, her face a mask of controlled anger. Aunt Linda and Uncle Greg flanked the other end, looking like reluctant referees at a boxing match. I took my seat, meeting no one's eyes directly. "All right," my father said, removing his glasses and setting them on the table with deliberate care. "We're all here because this family is falling apart, and I'm not going to let that happen. So we're going to talk, calmly, honestly, and we're going to fix this." "There's nothing to fix," Vanessa said immediately. "Rachel decided to publicly shame me because I vented to my daughter. That's all this is." "You didn't just vent," I said quietly. "You created a narrative that I'm selfish and don't contribute to this family. You told people I bought a condo I don't own. You made me the villain in a story that isn't true. You think keeping a spreadsheet of every dollar you've ever spent on me is villainous? That's psychotic, Rachel." "Girls," my mother started. "No, let her finish, because I want everyone here to understand something. I didn't make that spreadsheet to hold it over Vanessa's head. I made it because I was being gaslit into believing I was the problem. When your own family tells you you're selfish often enough, you start to believe it. I needed proof that I wasn't crazy." Vanessa laughed, sharp and bitter. "You needed proof? You needed to drag our dirty laundry in front of the entire family and make me look like some kind of con artist?" "You made yourself look like that," Jared said from the doorway. I hadn't even heard him arrive. He walked in, taking a seat next to Uncle Greg. "Sorry I'm late, traffic, but I read everything Rachel sent, and I gotta say, V, you've been telling some pretty creative stories." Vanessa's face flushed. "Stay out of this, Jared." "Kind of hard to when you told me Rachel bought a downtown condo and was too good for us now. I almost believed you. Would've if she hadn't corrected me." My father held up a hand. "Enough. Vanessa, did or did you not tell people your sister wasn't contributing to the family?" She was silent for a long moment, her jaw working. Finally, quietly, "I might have expressed frustration that she wasn't around as much anymore." Which is not the same as saying I never give back, and it ignores the fact that I spent years being around constantly, helping with everything, and apparently none of that counted? "It counted," Vanessa said, her voice cracking slightly. "Of course it counted. But you don't get it, Rachel. You don't know what it's like to be the one everyone expects everything from. The perfect daughter who got married, had the kids, did everything right. And then you got to live your own life. No one judged you for not being married yet. No one asked when you were having kids. You got freedom, and I got responsibility." The honesty of it hit me harder than her anger had.
This wasn't really about money or favors. It was about resentment so old and deep that it poisoned everything else. So you punished me for having different life choices, I said slowly, by rewriting history to make me the selfish one. I didn't mean to. She stopped, wiping out her eyes angrily. It just came out sometimes when people would ask about you, about how successful you are, how independent, and I'd think about how you got to choose, and I didn't. Not really. And maybe I wanted them to see you weren't perfect either. My mother reached across the table, covering Vanessa's hand with her own. Honey, you chose your life. We never forced you to. Didn't you? Vanessa's voice rose. Every conversation was about grandkids. Every holiday was about family. Every time I mentioned wanting something for myself, it was selfish. Rachel got to be the career woman, and I got to be the disappointment who actually gave you what you wanted, but was still not enough.
The room went very quiet. My father's expression had shifted from stern to deeply uncomfortable. Is that really how you felt? My mother asked, her voice small. Vanessa didn't answer, just stared at the table, tears running silently down her face. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. We'd both been trying to survive the same family expectations in different ways, and we'd ended up hurting each other in the process. I'm sorry, I said, and Vanessa's head snapped up. I'm sorry that you felt trapped. I'm sorry that your choices were judged differently than mine. I'm sorry that I didn't see how much you were struggling because I was too busy trying to prove I was valuable by helping all the time. But, I continued, my voice firm, that doesn't excuse lying about me. That doesn't make it okay to rewrite years of support into abandonment. You could have told me you were resentful. You could have told me you needed space. Instead, you made me the enemy. Vanessa wiped her face with shaking hands. I know I did, and I'm sorry too. I'm sorry I made you doubt yourself. I'm sorry I told Fiona things I shouldn't have. I was so angry at everything, and you were an easy target. Because I kept showing up, I said. Because I kept trying. Yeah. My father cleared his throat. So, where do we go from here? I looked at Vanessa, really looked at her, saw the exhaustion etched in the lines around her eyes, the weight she carried that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with trying to be someone she thought she had to be. We tell the truth, I said, to each other and to everyone else. No more stories, no more pretending. And Vanessa, you need to correct what you told people. Not because I'm forcing you to, but because it's the right thing to do. She nodded slowly. I will. I'll talk to Mom, to Linda, to everyone. I'll tell them I was wrong. And I'll stop keeping score. No more spreadsheets, no more tracking. If we're going to rebuild this, it has to be without resentment on either side. Aunt Linda, who'd been silent this whole time, spoke up. What about moving forward? How do you two fix this? Vanessa and I looked at each other across the table, and I saw my own uncertainty reflected back at me. Therapy, Vanessa said finally. Maybe we both need it. Maybe together, maybe separate. I don't know. But this is too broken to fix with just an apology. I agreed. My mother stood up abruptly. I'll get the coffee cake. We all need something sweet right now. As she disappeared into the kitchen, the tension in the room didn't vanish, but it shifted into something more bearable. Jared cracked a joke about family therapy being cheaper than legal fees. Uncle Greg asked about football. Slowly, awkwardly, we began to breathe again. Vanessa caught my eye and mouthed, "Thank you." I nodded. We weren't fixed. We weren't even really okay. But for the first time in years, we were being honest. And that felt like a start. 3 weeks after the family meeting, I found myself sitting in a therapist office in downtown Riverbank, the kind of space designed to feel calming with its muted gray walls and carefully placed succulents. Dr. Patel sat across from me, notepad balanced on her knee, her expression patient and non-judgmental.
So, you've decided to continue individual sessions rather than joint ones with your sister, she observed. For now, I said, fidgeting with the hem of my sweater. Vanessa is doing her own therapy. We agreed we both need to work through our own stuff before we try to fix things together. That sounds like a healthy boundary. How does that feel? I considered the question. Weird. Good weird, maybe. Like I'm finally allowed to focus on myself without feeling guilty about it. In the weeks since the confrontation, things had shifted in ways both visible and subtle. Vanessa had followed through on her promise, sending a message to the family group chat that was brief but honest. I need to apologize to Rachel and to all of you. I let my own frustrations create a narrative about her that wasn't fair or true. She's been more supportive than I gave her credit for, and I'm working on being better. The responses had been mixed. Some family members sent supportive messages. Others stayed silent, perhaps uncomfortable with the raw honesty of it all. My mother had called, her voice thick with emotion, apologizing for not seeing the dynamic between us sooner. I just wanted you girls to be close, she'd said. I didn't realize I was putting pressure on both of you in different ways. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was acknowledgement, and that mattered. Dr. Patel's voice brought me back to the present. You mentioned last week that you've been reassessing other relationships in your life. How's that going? I nodded slowly. I've been noticing patterns. How I always volunteer to help before anyone asks. How I say yes even when I want to say no. How I measure my worth by how useful I am to people. And what are you discovering about those patterns? That they're exhausting, and that maybe I learned them because in my family, being needed was the closest thing to being loved. The words hung in the air, true and painful. Dr. Patel didn't rush to fill the silence, and I appreciated that about her.
I've started saying no to things, I continued. Small things at first. My coworker asked me to cover her shift last week, and I just didn't. Said I had plans. Which was technically true. My plan was to stay home and read a book, but still. How did that feel? Terrifying, and then kind of amazing. A small smile crossed Dr. Patel's face. That's growth. Outside the therapy office, life was slowly reshaping itself into something new. I'd started having coffee with Jared every other week, discovering that we actually enjoyed each other's company outside of family obligations. He'd opened up about his own struggles with family expectations, the pressure to take over Uncle Greg's contracting business when he'd wanted to study architecture. We're all just trying to survive the same family in different ways, he'd said over lattes one Sunday morning. Vanessa and I had exchanged a few texts. Nothing deep, just small check-ins. She'd sent a photo of Fiona's science project, a volcano that had apparently exploded prematurely, covering half the kitchen in baking soda foam. I'd responded with a laughing emoji and a simple, "Kids are chaos." She'd replied, "But they're my chaos." It felt like a start. Not friendship yet, maybe not even sisterhood in the way we'd once understood it, but something honest. One Saturday afternoon, about a month after the family meeting, I was reorganizing my apartment, a task I'd been putting off for months, when I came across a box I didn't remember packing. Inside were old photo albums, birthday cards, elementary school drawings, artifacts from a childhood that felt both mine and not mine. I pulled out a photo from when I was maybe 7, Vanessa about 10. We were at a beach somewhere, building a sandcastle together, both grinning at the camera with missing teeth and sun-bleached hair. We looked happy, uncomplicated. I wondered when that had changed. When the expectations started weighing differently on each of us. When we stopped being allies and became competitors in a game neither of us had signed up for. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. "Hey, Fiona's asking about you. Would you want to come to her soccer game next Saturday? No pressure." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. The old Rachel would have said yes immediately, would have rearranged her entire day, would have shown up with snacks and enthusiastic cheering. Instead, I checked my calendar. I did have plans. A hiking trip with Bryn from work that I'd been looking forward to. I typed back. "I have plans that day, but I'd love to come to a game soon. Can you send me her schedule and I'll pick one that works?"
It was such a simple thing, this boundary, this acknowledgement that my time mattered, that I could want to support my niece without sacrificing my own plans. But my hands were shaking slightly as I hit send. Vanessa's response came a few minutes later. "That works. I'll send the schedule. And Rachel, thank you for not just automatically saying yes. I know that's progress for you." I smiled, unexpected tears pricking my eyes. She saw it. She understood. The following weeks settled into a new rhythm. I went to Fiona's soccer game 2 weeks later, cheering from the sidelines alongside other parents. Vanessa and I exchanged pleasantries, but didn't force deeper conversation. Fiona ran up to me after the game, sweaty and excited, and showed me the ribbon she'd gotten for Most Improved Player. "Aunt Rachel, did you see my goal?" "I did. That was incredible." She beamed, then hesitated. "Mom told me she was wrong about what she said, about you not helping." I crouched down to her level. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes too. The important thing is we're working on it." "Are you and Mom friends again?" I glanced at Vanessa, who was talking to another parent but watching me from the corner of her eye. "We're working on that too. It takes time." Fiona nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense, then ran off to celebrate with her teammates. That evening, I sat on my apartment balcony, watching the sun set over Riverbank. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, clouds moving slowly across the horizon. My phone sat beside me, silent for once, no crisis to manage, no emergency to solve. I thought about the spreadsheet I had created, the evidence I had gathered, the truth I had fought so hard for. It had been necessary, I don't regret it, but I also knew that moving forward couldn't be about keeping score anymore. It had to be about something different. I pulled out my phone and opened a new note. At the top, I typed, "Things I want for myself." The cursor blinked, waiting. For so long, I would have struggled to fill that space, would have defaulted to what others needed, what would make me valuable, what would earn me a place at the table. Instead, I started writing. A life that doesn't require defending, relationships built on honesty, not obligation, the freedom to say no without guilt, the confidence to say yes for the right reasons, a definition of family that I choose, not one I inherit. As I wrote, something loosened in my chest. Not completely. Healing wasn't that simple, but enough to let me breathe a little easier.
My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Your father and I are planning a small dinner next month. Just immediate family. Would love to have you there if you're comfortable." I read it twice, checking for hidden meanings or expectations. Found none. Just a simple invitation. "I'll be there," I typed back. "Thanks for asking." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deeper shades of purple and gold, I realized something profound. I'd spent so much of my life trying to earn my place in my family, to prove I deserved to be there. But the truth was simpler and harder than that. I deserved to be there because I existed. Not because I gave or fixed or helped, but because I was Rachel. And that was enough. The evidence I'd gathered, the receipts I'd kept, had served their purpose. They'd forced the truth into the light, had validated my experience when everyone else tried to rewrite it. But I didn't need them anymore. That night, I opened my laptop and looked at the folder labeled "The Truth." Inside were all those carefully organized documents, the proof of a decade of invisible labor. I didn't delete it. Some things were worth keeping, if only as a reminder of how far I'd come. But I did create a new folder beside it, labeled it simply "Moving Forward." Inside, I started a new document, not a spreadsheet this time, but a journal entry. Today, I chose myself, not against my family, but for me. And tomorrow I'll choose myself again, and the day after that, until choosing myself feels as natural as breathing. I sat back, reading the words, feeling their truth settle into my bones. Outside my window, the city lights flickered on one by one, pushing back against the darkness. Inside my small apartment, surrounded by secondhand furniture and walls painted the color of open skies, I felt something I hadn't felt in years.
peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of something stronger. Self-respect, clarity, the knowledge that I could survive the truth even when it was ugly, even when it hurt, even when it meant losing the version of family I'd always wanted. And in that survival, I'd found something better. Not a family bound by obligation and resentment, but the possibility of one built on honesty and choice. It wouldn't be perfect. There would be setbacks and hard conversations and moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But I was ready for that now. I closed my laptop and walked to the window, pressing my palm against the cool glass. Somewhere out there, Vanessa was probably putting her kids to bed, maybe thinking about our conversation at the soccer game. My parents were settling into their evening routine. The family was continuing, evolving, reshaping itself around these new truths. And I was part of it. Not as the fixer or the giver or the reliable one. Just as Rachel. Just as myself. And for the first time in my life, that felt like more than enough. Have you ever had to prove your worth to the people who should have valued you without question? Sometimes the hardest thing we do isn't cutting toxic people out. It's learning to love ourselves enough to demand honesty from the people who stay. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your own journey in the comments below. Because here's what I've learned. Family isn't just about who you're related to. It's about who sees you, really sees you, and chooses to show up with truth instead of convenient lies. Your story matters. Your truth matters. And you deserve relationships that don't require you to dim your light or question your reality. Stay strong. Stay honest. And never apologize for knowing your worth. Got 2 more amazing stories lined up for you. If you dug this one, you're gonna love what's next. Go ahead and click.